So we've got an absolutely amazing looking Red Sea tank here. In this camera, you're really not seeing all the colours. There is some absolutely beautiful coral in here, which this camera is not picking up at all. But if you saw this tank in real life, it's actually really, really beautiful. This thing is a flipper. It's one of the very best things you could ever buy. And it makes it so easy, like if you see a bit of algae, it makes it just absolutely easy just to give the tank a little bit of a clean. So I've started doing a spin test on this water, but some of these zoos are not opening up as well as they used to. Now there is what looks like a bit of a growth going on between them, so there is a little bit of hair algae. So the hair algae might be bothering them a little bit. So that's one bit of a point why they might not be opening up so well. But the other thing that I'm going to recommend that we do is send away an ICP test, because we can send Triton an ICP test. And for a beautiful tank like this, I'd recommend doing that at least about once a quarter, because then that'll give you a good reference for what all your micro and trace and minor elements are. And then if anything changes, then you've got, then you can see what it is that was right when everything was going to plan. So if you have a good reef tank like this, I do really recommend ICP testing. Now the other thing I really want to point out too is this hawkfish. He was just up here a second ago and he literally just jumped out and bit my finger. So where is he now? Obviously he won't do it. So there he is there. Now I'm not expecting him to do it when you get the camera out, because that's not how things work. But I'm worried they're a little bit skinny. So when you look under the fish, from the bottom of the gill plate to the anus, I never want to see that go up. I also don't want to see the vertebrae at all. So looking at these fish, they're a little bit on the skinny side. So I will also be reviewing the nutrients, because I want to look at why are we getting hair algae, which is actually quite normal, but we need to deal with that. And then let's look at what the nutrient levels are now. So we've got an alkalinity of 8, which is good. We've got a pH of 7.9, which is too low for me. I want it 8.4. So I definitely want that to come up. Phosphate's on the high side. Phosphate's 4.5. And that's why we'd be getting this hair algae. And the hair algae might be why the zoa doesn't want to open up. Calcium's 410. So I'd rather that be a little bit higher. Magnesium is pretty good. I'd rather a little bit higher. There is a tiny bit of ammonia, which is interesting. And then nitrate is good. So that's where the tests are at now. Okay, so the salinity in here is 0.023. If we're running an aquarium and we're not adding new fish, I prefer it slightly higher, maybe 0.024, but I'm pretty happy with that. And the temperature is just over 25, so I'm definitely happy with that. I don't like adding fish when the salinity is high, but when you're not adding fish, I do like to creep it up a little bit. Fun job of removing these clownfish, because they've been behaving very badly. So they've been very aggressive to any new fish that have gone in. And of course we got one out very quickly, and the other one has decided to hide under the reef. So we've tried putting some nets in there to see if the clownfish will get used to the nets, so we've got a chance to grab him. But I think that our delusion is significant. We've also done a bit of a gravel clean and removed some water for the water change. There's our little culprit there. We've also cleaned the filter sock, and we've also cleaned the skimmer. We got to really try to clean the inside of the neck of the skimmer a couple of times a week. Now it's all about getting this fella out. Now when we try to remove this clownfish, there's another couple of fish ready to go into this tank, but I am very against adding fish to full salinity, because basically the salinity of a fish is about half seawater. So therefore the fish actually use a whole lot of energy with their osmoregulation system. So close. So the fish use a whole lot of energy with their osmoregulation system. So what happens is the ocean's sort of 0.024, 0.025. Then the collectors catch the fish straight out of 0.024, 0.025 and throw them straight into much fresher water. So anything as low as 1.4, 1.5, typically like 1.7. And therefore the osmoregulation system, which balances the salt in the fish, doesn't have to work very hard. And if the osmoregulation system doesn't have to work hard, then suddenly there's lots of energy available for the immune system. Also, various pathogens hate the water being a little bit fresher. So by making the water a little bit fresher, you're creating a major advantage for the immune system of the fish, and you're creating a major advantage in that the pathogens, bacteria, and so forth don't like the water fresh. So therefore, assuming that the collector has collected your fish and thrown them into fresher water, reducing the chance of disease with their fish, then they're going to sell their fish often to a wholesaler, and then the wholesaler may run a slightly higher but still low salt level. Then the wholesaler will sell it to a retailer, and the retailer will typically run a slightly higher but still lower salt level. So it's all about not jumping your salt level up. You can jump down, no problem. You can go from high and boom them into low because that eases osmotic pressure, but you can't do it the other way. You want to go up in salt, no more than 1, maximum 2 fully climatized per day. But you can go down fast. If you have problems with your fish, boom, you can boom it down. If you boom it down with your corals in there, they're absolutely not going to appreciate it. But as far as the fish go, I don't like adding the fish to full salinity because I don't like stressing my fish's immune system, because I don't like shocking their osmoregulation system, because the first thing that's going to happen is the immune system's going to collapse. Because the fish don't need an immune system if they're stressed, because they're putting all their energy into their fight or flight system, respiration system, and then they also don't need their immune system if they're having osmotic problems, because they need to make sure their salt level is regulated, otherwise they'll die. So they're not worried about a disease tomorrow if something more major is occurring. And then once your fish are gone back to good again and everything's okay and the stress is gone, you need to allow about 3 weeks for the immune system to return. And that's why I do like and encourage people dose Vogel, because Vogel is a blend of minerals that help to artificially stimulate the fish's immune system. Because whenever you do anything major with the aquarium, and let's call this major, that's going to create an amount of stress on the fish. And then we need to get everything back to good. Then it's going to take about a month before at least 3 weeks, for the immune system of the fish to really return before they're fully resilient again. And it can be very disappointing for people when something goes wrong and then everything seems to get better, but then it takes a bad turn again, even though you're improving the situation. And that just is the fact that the immune system is recovering, but it takes time. So you need to be patient, and you need to not back your stresses up one after another. So if you do something stressful, you've got to really try to let them settle down for a good month before you go doing anything again. And under no circumstances would I be adding new fish for a month. Put some fish in, make sure the salinity is on the low side, wait a month, then you can pursue with what you want to do next. Back-to-back stress is a great way to kill your fish. Air algae is concerned, one of the things that does need to be considered is carbonic acid from CO2. So if you have a house that's always shut up and air conditioned, you do need to be aware that it's potential your oxygen level in your air may be slightly decreased, and you may have slightly increased CO2 in your atmosphere. And you think that won't make a difference, but sometimes it really does. Even to the point where people get airlines from their skimmers and put them outside, and then they notice that their pH stays a lot more balanced and they get a lot less algae. Because what you need to be aware of is that oxygen really helps your good bacteria, and the algae is benefited by CO2 instead of oxygen. So if you have a nutrient source in the form of fish waste or coral waste, and then you have good bacteria and you have nice high redox potential to break that bacteria down, then you're not going to get algae. On the other hand, if your CO2 level is higher, then it's going to favor the algae. So trying to make sure that your room that the aquarium's in is well ventilated and you've opened up your doors sometimes can really help. So the salinity in here is, or specific gravity, is still 0.023. So I'm pretty happy with that. Like, it's not really high, but I'm going to add a little bit of extra RO because I'm always scared of adding fish into higher salinity. Now, it's not uncommon that corals are not going to be totally impressed with this. So if the corals don't open up as well for a little bit, that's not too surprising. But once the fish are in and settled, it's really a good idea to start slowly raising your salinity back up again. So even after a day or so, if we could start getting a degree a day up, that's going to mean the corals are going to be happy with that. Now with this pH being too low, I'm concerned about carbonic acid being an issue there. And also the high phosphate. Phosphate's also an acid, so that's likely to drop the pH as well. And the tank's saying that there's a tiny bit of ammonia in the water. I'm not sure that I believe that test terribly. Sometimes you do just get a bung test, especially when we're talking about such low levels. The tank is dosed with energy A and B from Red Sea, which is really good stuff. But that's why I really love sending away the ICP tests every now and then, because there's lots of other very good products that basically do a similar thing. And then what you need to do is you need to look at the combination of products that you've got or you use or you could use in order to make sure that your levels are right on your ICP test. Because other than ICP test, you have no idea of trying to balance your minor and trace elements, which compared to the major elements are really not a big problem. But when you come to really peaking your aquarium and making your aquarium as good as possible, it's sort of like the equalizer band with your music. When you get your bass and treble and mids all right, and then you use the equalizer to just go and fine tune it. It really makes a difference. It's just you've got to get all your big stuff right. When all your big stuff is right, then you can start fine tuning your traces. And when you get them right, you find your tank just goes better than you can believe. So this is a Triton ICP test, and this is something that I recommend everyone with a reef tank sends away on a semi-regular basis, just to get an idea of how their aquarium runs well, and also if something goes wrong, what variables are occurring, in order for you to get a better understanding of the micro and trace elements that are going on in your aquarium. Because when you fine-tune these things, you find your aquarium really peaks. To reduce the phosphate level of this aquarium, we're going to add some algon pouches. So I'm just going to put them in the back here. And every 2 weeks, I would recommend throwing out that little pouch and putting another one in until you see your phosphate level drop. We want it not zero, but close to zero. This tank is currently getting fed frozen shrimp, which as a part of the diet, I'm quite happy with. But I would like to change the main food that's being fed into Spectrum probiotics. See if I can get it to... Doesn't want to focus. There you go, focused. So Spectrum probiotics is a cold extruded food, so it's not pressure cooked and processed like many other foods, and it has a massive list of very high quality ingredients in it, but also it has what's called your probiotic bacteria. Now your probiotic bacteria is wonderful. It's finally got into focus. So with your probiotic bacteria, that means that if the fish eat this food, when the fish poo, the bacteria in the poo eats the poo. So particularly in this circumstance, we've got some fish that I'm a little bit concerned are a little bit thin. I want to feed them up a little bit more. But in saying that, the nutrient levels are up a little bit. So I want to make sure that the water quality doesn't deteriorate and the pH is on the low side. So feeding a probiotic food right now is probably more important than ever, but I will always have your probiotics as my main food. I do like feeding the frozen food as a bit of variety. And then I also love Danichi Color. That's another one of my favorite foods.